All right, today is the day, guys. Midnight is upon us. It is Thursday. I recorded this video yesterday, but I bring it out today. I wanted to put it out the day of early access. There's going to be a few hours. I think it comes out at 5. So there's going to be a few hours of just kind of people sitting around, downtime. Um, Probably going to watch some YouTube videos, etc. This one is going to be kind of like a little discussion as to which class that I'm picking for Midnight and why, and potentially why you should as well. Some of the benefits to the decisions that I made and why I made them. So, obviously, we're here in Ebenhold on our Death Knight here. I'm going to be probably playing mostly tank for Midnight. We may switch it up. I've got like kind of a track record of switching it up, but for the most part, I want to start here. I want to start on Death Knight. I want to play Blood, and I want to play tank. So why did I make that decision? Um, Basically, Blood Death Knight is sort of like the quintessential main character vibe. You are extremely self-sufficient. You basically worry about nothing. You have tools to overcome all sorts of problems. Basically, anything that the game throws your way, there's some kind of a tool that you have to basically just say no and not have to deal with that. Also, Death Knight is a really, really cool class when it comes to like the theme and the class identity and the role play and things that have happened in World of Warcraft on Azeroth. Historically, the Wrath of the Lich King expansion was a very, very fun expansion, a very, um, I would say, like unique and important expansion for the game. A lot of things tie into the Lich King and what happened during that time period. Um, Also, there's going to be a revamp to Northrend, I believe, which is the basically continent of the Lich King, or that the Lich King was on, with Icecrown Citadel, etc. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is going to be a revamp to that zone. I heard about that earlier in the month, earlier the year. So that's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to see what that's like. So for us as Death Knights, we kind of get to sort of play off of that class fantasy and exist in that world in our heads. So basically, on Death Knight, there's a few things that we have access to across all three specs, which I'll cover kind of briefly here, and then more Blood specific and why I'm choosing Blood for my Midnight starting playthrough here. Uh, First things first, because I'm here in Ebenhold, we get access to this cool Death Gate. This costs us a rune for whatever reason. I don't know why they did that. You can't cast it in combat, I don't think, so there's not really a reason for it to cost anything. But whatever. It's a cool ability. We cast it, and it takes us. Basically, I'll summon it for you guys so you can sort of see it. We cast it, and it provides us with a gate, a portal that takes us here, right? If we cast it again within a certain amount of time, it takes us back to the point that we cast it at. So you can be, doing dungeons or whatever with your friends or farming, leveling, etc. You can cast your Death Gate. You can come here for whatever reason if you want to like change your Rune Forge, which I'll touch on here next in a little bit. But you can just kind of come here. It's a little like role play area basically. Um, Come here, do your stuff, buy some cosmetics, do your rune forge, whatever, feel like a death knight, and then you can walk back to the portal, right back to where you started on your leveling or questing, whatever progress you were at. So, pretty cool, very unique. There's a couple of other classes that have similar abilities, but this is uh, ours, and it takes us here to Ebenhold. So, pretty cool. What else do we have that is unique? Okay, yeah, so I mentioned in the beginning of the video how we have lots of different ways to kind of like say no to game mechanics. So I'll cover those things here briefly. We have a couple of buttons, one called Icebound Fortitude, which is on a 2-minute cooldown. It reduces damage we take, and it also breaks us free from stuns and makes us immune to stuns for 8 seconds. Pretty cool. Humans get the Will to Survive 3-minute cooldown, where it just removes all stuns. Icebound Fortitude is basically that and then more on a shorter cooldown. So, pretty cool button, very thematic, and lets us basically ignore some mechanics in the game. Very, very similar button to that, Lichborn. 1.5-minute cooldown because of a talent that we have. Draw upon unholy energy to become undead for 12 seconds. And then increasing leech by 6% and making you immune to charm, fear, and sleep. There are some game mechanics that like do not work on undead targets. So we do count as undead for those mechanics, and then also um, we get immunity to the charm, fear, and sleep. So charms, fears, and sleeps do come out sometimes in Mythic Plus and rating content, so you can basically immune and break free from those with the Lichborn. So pretty cool. The other one we have, which lets us ignore mechanics, is going to be our Death's Advance. With the talent, we get 2 charges of this, 45-second cooldown each. For 10 seconds, your movement speed is increased by 45%, and you cannot be slowed below 100% of normal speed. What does that mean? It just means that, this is me walking at 100%, right? If I cast Death's Advance, I cannot be slowed below my normal amount, no matter what. I also gain, so like say they applied a bunch of slows to me, that would maybe reduce my speed to like 5% of normal. That won't work. I will at least be 100% of my normal speed no matter what for those 10 seconds. But then if there isn't any additional slows applied, I will instead gain an increase of 45% movement speed. Also, you become immune to forced movement effects and knockbacks. Forced movement effects include things like knock-ups. So there have been some pretty big raid mechanics and dungeon mechanics in the past that do like giant knock-ups or knockbacks that will kill players. You get to just hit your Death's Advance and say no to being knocked up or knocked back. Pretty sweet. There's a couple of actually there's one dungeon, I forget what it's called, but it's the one with all the birds where you're like up and there's a lot of knockback effects and wind, and one of the new Mythic Plus, or I should say Mythic Plus seasonal dungeons that are coming up in Midnight. So that is going to be pretty good for us there as well. Death's Advance is just a cool button. So basically, Lichborn, Death's Advance, and Icewind Fortitude are kind of say no to mechanic buttons. We have one more in Anti-Magic Shell. It works a little bit differently. Anti-Magic Shell gives you a magic damage shield and prevents the application of harmful magical effects as long as the shield remains. It does not remove effects like the other ones do, but it does make us immune while the shield lasts. So you can use this. They code things differently depending on what it is, but sometimes, and this takes like testing in dungeon environments and things like that, but sometimes a boss will put out a debuff on like the whole party, right, normally, but if you have access to your anti-magic shell, you can pre-cast it, and you can not only avoid whatever magical damage may come out, but also whatever negative magical effects may come out on yourself from that as well. So you don't have like a dispel like a healer does, but you do have the ability to avoid the magical application in the first place. So that can help your healer out, and your group party out in general. So that is what I wanted to cover for like the major sort of say no to mechanic buttons that we get as Death Knights. Now for Blood specifically, what does Blood do differently? What's Blood's identity as a character, as a class? So we basically, just like the other Death Knight specs, we have these runes. We spend runes to cast our basic abilities, not all of them, but most of them. And each rune that you spend will generate you some runic power. That's the next bar here, this blue bar. Our Heart Strike, which is one of our main melee abilities, provides more runic power per rune spent than the other runes, the other abilities. So Heart Strike is kind of like your most efficient runic power generator. As for runic power spenders, we have, I think, like 3 technically, but really one that we use most of the time, which is our Death Strike. The other one being our Death Coil, which we almost generally never cast, but because we always want to be basically casting our Death Strike. But our Death Strike is not only a single target DPS ability, our best one, it hits the hardest. It's a physical damage single target strike ability, which we can actually modify with some other talents to make it AoE. But what it does is it hits the target and it heals us for a percentage of whatever damage we've taken in the last 5 seconds. So, Death Knight excels greatly at self-healing. We are not as good at mitigating damage as the other tanks are for the most part, but we are really, really good at healing damage back. Probably the best one at healing damage back. So, basically, we want to spend our runes to get our runic power up, so we have enough runic power to cast our Death Strike whenever we take heavy damage. That's basically the gist of what Death Knight and Blood Death Knight is, okay? Now, what ends up happening when you actually play the spec is there's kind of like this dance that you play between spending our runes, generating runic power, and spending a runic power. And how that dance kind of happens is we generate 3 runes at a time. No more than 3 runes, but at least 3 runes at a time. So if I only spend 1, technically, I'm not making the use out of my rune generation, right? Which is affected by haste, by the way. Our haste stat directly affects how quickly we regenerate our runes. So what you want to be doing is you want to be getting yourself to at least 3 runes recharging at all times. So how this generally works is you're going to use your Death's Caress, you're going to use a Death and Decay, you're going to use a Morrowind. The reason why we do that is because our Death and Decay is kind of like a set it and forget it permanent AoE damaging area on the ground, but when we stand in it, we actually gain benefits. So it's kind of like a self buff we always want to keep up. So Death and Decay is one of our self buffs. The other self buff is our Bone Shield, which comes from either Death's Caress or Morrowind. So basically, you have 6 runes to start. You're going to use 1 rune on your Death and Decay, 1 rune on your Death's Caress, and probably cast a Morrowind, which costs 2 runes. So what that looks like is Death and Decay, Death's Caress, Morrowind, right? So we got 4 runes that are charging right now if we do it that way, right? And we've generated 5 Bone Shield stacks. What's significant about 5 Bone Shield stacks and 4 runes? Well, 4 runes means that we at least have our 3 recharging at a time, so we're kind of getting our maximum rune recharging benefit. 5 Bone Shield stacks plays into this talent here called Ossuary, which whenever you're building out your Death Knight talent tree, we're always going to be taking Ossuary. It's not really a choice. You just always take this no matter what. What this does is while you have at least 5 Bone Shield charges, the cost of Death Strike is reduced by 5 runic power. Additionally, your maximum runic power is increased by 10%. You do want to be reducing that Death Strike cost by 5%, basically all the time. It's not an absolute game breaker, but you'll definitely notice it, and your runic power efficiency will be drastically decreased if you don't upkeep these 5 charges of Bone Shield. So that's why we always want to be at least 5 charges of Bone Shield at all times. What you really want is 6, so that when you get hit by a melee attack, you are going to lose a Bone Shield charge, which is going to put you from 6 to 5. We don't want to go from 5 to 4, right? Because you lost that passive. We want to be 6 to 5, right? So basically, you want to constantly be at least 6 or more Bone Shield charges, so you safely can stay above 5. That's kind of our little dance, right? So we're spending our runes, at least 3, safer to be at 4, so we're not really thinking about having to upkeep those 3 maximum charges. Keeping our Bone Shield stacks at 6 or more, and keeping our runic power in the bank enough so that we can always cast our Death Strike when we take heavy damage. That's Blood Death Knight pretty much summed up as deep as you really need to go to play it functionally, right? To kind of make the most out of what it does. There's lots of little optimizations and stuff you can do, guys. There's other things you'll be casting in between. You'll be casting your Blood Boils, which cost you nothing. So basically, you're always kind of juggling and monitoring your abilities on a Blood Death Knight. Which obviously, I mean, maybe that like sounds basically intuitive. All classes do that. But I do feel like the Blood Death Knight kind of maintenance and cycle little dance between your abilities and your generation, your resources. I think it's fun, guys. I think that Blood Death Knight is very fun to play and feels very powerful. So you get kind of like double dip. You get power and fun. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. Obviously, that's an opinion. That's my perspective. That's how I feel, which is why I think you guys should try it out and give it a shot and see what you think, if you agree with me or not. This isn't supposed to be like a super in-depth guide, so I'm not going to cover every single minute aspect of things you can do better and worse. I just want to kind of give you guys the skeleton, no pun intended, of what it takes to kind of play Blood Death Knight at a semi-optimal way, okay? I missed a couple of very thematic things that I'm going to touch on next. So, what else does Blood Death Knight do better than other classes? What are kind of our unique niches? One is our gripping. Okay, we are able to pull enemies to us, to the party, which allows us to group up enemies and AoE them down much more effectively in like dungeon or farming content. So that's kind of our biggest skill or niche, is gripping enemies closer to our party so they can DPS them down easier, or we can, right? Very, very cool thing to be able to do. This won't work on any of the enemies in here. These are all target dummies. I won't be able to pull them, but I'll target this veteran's training dummy here. I'll cast my death grip, right? You see it does that like purple lightning beam to them, and it attempts to pull them to me. With some talents that we have, it actually gives us a bone shield charge as well. So gripping doesn't really like cost you any uptime on your bone shield. When you're gripping something, it'll give you a bone shield charge as well. So that's pretty cool. We get 2 charges of that because of the Death's Echo talent that we took, which gives us the 2 charges of our Death's Advance, 2 charges of our Death and Decay, and 2 charges of our Death Grip. So very important talent you guys want to always be taking here on this side when you're building up your talents. By the way, I will cover talents briefly at the end of this video. Don't look at this as gospel. Or don't clown me in the comments. This is just like a testing thing that I'm doing. This is not optimal, but I also don't like when content creators tell people what optimal is, right? I understand there's a time and a place, but there are also scenarios for everything, right? So optimal can change based off of what you're doing, based off of what you think is fun, based off of what's hard for you to maintain. Sometimes what one person can do optimally isn't what another person can do optimally, right? So optimal is a little bit of a perspective at the end of the day, guys. So where was I? With grips, all right? So we've got our death grip, right? Now, in the talent tree here, there's a choice node. We're always going to want to get one of these, either the Gorfine's Grasp or the Abomination Limb. Abomination Limb was, I think, introduced in Shadowlands, if I'm not mistaken. There are benefits to both. There's niche case uses for both. I would say Gorfine's Grasp is probably better in almost all scenarios, but Abomination's Limb is easier to use and a little bit more noob-friendly, and pulls things in for longer. So Gorfine's Grasp is a one-time cast, 30-yard range. Everything in the radius that can be pulled will be pulled, and it also silences those targets for 3 seconds. So it's very, very strong, and if used well, pretty much hands down the better of the two between Abomination's Limb and Gorfine's Grasp. But what Gorfine's Grasp does, what Abomination's Limb does, you cast it, and it lasts for, I think it's like 10 seconds or something like that. And it attempts to pull things in range consistently over those 10 seconds. So you can see those little green beams shooting out. It's attempting to pull these enemies into me. So what you can do is you can run through a pack, and if there's various enemies kind of staggered around the area, you can Abomination Limb, and it'll pull all those enemies into you one after another, and then your group can start pulling, or can start DPSing them all down. Between your Abomination Limb and your 2 casts of Death Grip, you're going to basically be able to get everything that you need in an area pulled in without having to like run around in a giant circle and pull them all like that. So we have very efficient pulling as Death Knights. Very, very cool. It feels nice to play. It's just a good quality of life ability for us to do. What else do we have here, guys? That's about it for kind of like our niches. We do have a group damage or magic damage avoidance buff here in our anti-magic zone. I think it's 15%. 15% isn't huge, but it's enough to make a difference. We definitely want to like use this basically whenever a big magic damage AoE is going out on the group. We're going to pop our anti-magic zone down. What else do we have here? We get access to Path of Frost, kind of a cool role-play-esque ability. It lets you walk on water. It lets everyone in your party walk on water. It kind of freezes the water beneath their feet, and they can walk on it. One careful thing to know, which is why I'm bringing this up, is if you cast this on your party and they have the buff, and they for some reason like fall, like some dungeons or raids have maps where like you go through like a tunnel or a hole in the ground and you fall into some water. If you cast this, everyone will die because you'll treat the water as solid ground, and you will take fall damage and potentially die. So just know that can happen if you cast that. What else we got? We got our cool little friend here. We got our Raised Dead. 2-minute cooldown, 1-minute duration. It can die. It does have a health bar. It can die. It's actually got a decent amount of health though, and as long as it's not being like targeted individually, it probably won't die, but it could. So just a cool little guy. It does some damage for you. You can do some talents to make it do an additional damage reduction for you as well. But just a cool thematic thing. We get like a zombie we can resurrect. What else we got? Oh, you know what? Let's go with that next. For utility, we do have Raise Ally. It's a battle res. There are a few other classes, right, that do have battle reses. Ours is called Raise Ally. It costs us runic power. It's instant cast, and it resurrects a dead party member from the grave during combat. Very, very powerful. Why I'm running over here is because I wanted to kind of touch on this basic Death Knight mechanic. It's not blood. It's all 3 specs called Rune Forging. What we do here, we have to be in Ebonhold. We have to be in front of one of these rune forges, these skulls with the blue flame. There's a few of them around the circle here. This gives us access to a weapon enchantment unique to Death Knights only. It does replace our normal auction house or crafted enchantments for our weapons, so you can't have both. But they're very, very powerful, and there is actually a talent that buffs... which one is it right here? Unholy Bond, yeah. Increases the effectiveness of your Runeforge effects by 20%. Very cool. So these Runeforges that we have access to, there are like 7 of them. All of them have niche use cases. I'd say each of them is actually good in its own way. Some of them are like tuned a little bit better than others, and I'll get to that here in a second. One of the ones that I want to mention right now is because Midnight is right around the corner. It's coming out, like I said, today. For leveling, we get this cool rune called Rune of Unending Thirst. It engraves your weapon with a rune that increases your movement speed by 6%. Additionally, when you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor, you heal for 6% of your maximum health and gain 12% haste and movement speed. Awesome. While you are leveling, you're going to be cranking out this buff constantly. You'll be much faster with more haste, healing yourself. So very, very strong rune for leveling. I like that they added that for us. When you are not leveling, once you are max level and you are doing like hard content, you're going to want to come back to your Runeforge here in Ebonhold with your Deathgate, and you're going to want to, on Blood Death Knight, there's, I guess, 3. There's 3 good runes you can pick from. Other guides you will read will say that there's really only 1. The Rune of the Fallen Crusader is generally considered to be the best. It says engrave your weapon with a rune that has a chance to heal you for 4% of your maximum health and increase total strength by 18% for 15 seconds. That is a huge strength modifier. 18% is massive. What does strength do for us as a Blood Death Knight? Well, it makes us do more damage on everything, right? Okay, so just more DPS, which contributes to our threat, which is good, and just damage is always good. You always want damage. It also contributes to our parry chance as a Blood Death Knight, which is our ability to block or avoid physical melee damage hits only. And then also it increases the armor that we gain from our Bone Shield. So more strength actually contributes to more armor through Bone Shield as well, which is pretty cool. So this is our highest strength increase that we are capable of gaining from a rune here. With the amount of attack speed and haste that we will have, also there's a talent here called Icy Talons. You have runic power spending abilities increase your melee attack speed by 6% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. It's very easy for us to upkeep this at 100%. So you constantly gain 6 to 18% attack speed, which then plays into more procs of our runes here as well. So pretty cool. So within testing, once you have some decent haste, you pretty much gain a 100% uptime on Rune of the Fallen Crusader for the most part. It's like between 80 and 100% uptime is what I generally find I have on this buff. So that is a very big strength buff that we kind of constantly upkeep. Plus, the 4% heal of our maximum health is decent. It's not crazy. We obviously heal way more from our Death Strike, but it is a small heal, and it is noticeable. The strength bonus that we're getting from this is what we're really looking for here. Now, the other, I would say... Okay, no, I'll go with what the guides online say is the other option. Then I'll talk about the one that I like to use and why here after that. Rune of Sanguination, specifically for Blood Death Knight, specifically for Sand Lane. Engrave your weapon with a rune that causes your Death Strike to deal increased damage based on the target's missing health. So the lower the health the enemy has, the more damage a Death Strike is going to do. When you fall below 35% health, you heal for 58% of your maximum health over 8 seconds. That is a really big amount of your maximum health over 8 seconds. But, and they say that this is good. I think it's like a 4-minute internal cooldown. This occurs every 4 minutes or so. It's either 2 or 4 minutes. I don't remember what it is. It's noticeable, and when you don't have runic power to Death Strike, this can save your life. Legitimately save your life. It is a decent oh crap effect that will be noticeable, and since we have a lot of maximum health, it's a decent amount of our heal, or it's a decent heal, so not bad, and it does add a little bit of DPS through the Death Strikes there as well. So definitely a good effect, one to consider, one to test. Okay, Rune of the Stone Skin Gargoyle. This is like designed to be the tank rune. Most Blood Death Knights do not run this. I do like it, actually. Engrave your weapon with a rune that increases your armor by 6% and all stats by 6%. So that's not stats like haste, mastery, etc., but stats like your stamina, your strength, and your armor, it says. So if I was to equip this, let's actually do a little bit of testing here. What do I have right now? I have a Stone Skin Gargoyle right now, okay? I currently have 531 strength, 8472 stamina, and 690 armor. Right? If I instead was to take my Rune of the Fallen Crusader and enchant that, yes. I'm going to drop to 501, 7992, and 651 armor, right? So a pretty significant dip in our strength and our stamina. How you can basically look at that is it almost comes out as a wash. I've done the math a few times. With Rune of the Fallen Crusader, if you did have a 100% uptime on that 18% strength bonus, you gain the identical amount of physical damage reduction when your Bone Shield is up. It's at like 64% in both setups, right? Because you gain the flat armor increase from the Stone Skin Gargoyle, plus some strength, right? Which equates to less Bone Shield armor, but more flat armor, right? Base armor, which increases to the exact same amount of total physical damage reduction and armor when you have it up. So 64% physical damage reduction through both setups. And that's only if Fallen Crusader is at 100% uptime. So it's a wash. You do gain more damage through the Rune of the Fallen Crusader for sure. It is a higher DPS uptime or higher DPS overtime with Rune of the Fallen Crusader. So you can look at it like, well, my physical damage reduction is the same, my damage is better, so why would I not be running Rune of the Fallen Crusader? Yes, that is the logic. Rune of the Fallen Crusader is the more optimal rune there. But you also gain more HP from the Gargoyle. So when I'm going to re-equip this, I'm at 159k right now. I go to 169k, right? And the thing about that is, too, the more armor and HP that you have from gear, the obviously more value you get from the Rune of the Stone Skin Gargoyle. So I haven't done the testing at like super max endgame gearing, which one numerically comes out ahead in terms of survivability. I've got a feeling it's going to be Stone Skin Gargoyle is going to actually like drastically be a better survivability rune. It will also do less damage though, for sure, because you'll have more strength with your stats. Your 18% stat from the Fallen Crusader is going to be more noticeable than the 6% strength stat bonus, obviously, from the Stone Skin Gargoyle. But it kind of like smooths out your damage taken as well. So I like Stone Skin Gargoyle. If I feel like my damage is adequate, I actually prefer to run Stone Skin Gargoyle and feel a little bit beefier. So that's just like my reasoning there for that, guys. You can do whatever you want. Sanguination, Fallen Crusader, Stone Skin Gargoyle are all good with Unending Thirst for leveling. That's what I'm going to say you should be doing. On Frost and Unholy, you've got the Razor Ice and the Apocalypse runes, which are the kind of niche runes for those specs. And then Rune of Spell Warding is kind of a PvP thing. Engrave your weapon with a rune that deflects 3% of all spell damage, and taking magic damage has a chance to create a shield that absorbs magic damage equal to 10% of your maximum health. You can run this in like super crazy magic damage dungeons if you feel like there's like specifically really hard magic damage going out, but I'm going to recommend you just pick Stone Skin in that scenario anyways. But just a rune to think about and just know that it exists. So leveling, you're going to be rocking the Unending Thirst here. I'm actually going to, just because I'm here, I'm going to do that right now. Rock that. With speed enchants plus this rune, we're actually pretty fast. So not too bad. That kind of covers it there, guys. That's sort of like the Death Knight playstyle and unique things in a nutshell. Last thing I want to do here for you is give you a little bit of a rundown of the talents, all right? Then we'll end the video there. So with the left side Death Knight tree, I'm going to kind of just touch on the important ones. We're not going to give you like a full breakdown here, but the important ones you definitely want to gain access to is filling out all 6 of our top nodes here. We want our Raised Dead for sure. We want our Cleaving Strikes for sure. Our Improved Death Strike and our Death Strike for sure. Our Icewind Fortitude and our Runic Attenuation for sure as well. This gives us access to more Runic Power. Runic Power is the name of the game for us, all right? Any way we can get Runic Power, we want it, all right? Next, we definitely are going to want to pick up a Veteran of the Third War, our Interrupt, our Mind Freeze, and our Unholy Momentum. This is just 4% haste. We love haste. Haste gives us more runes generation, which gives us more runic power, right, for spending those. So we need all of that. Really, really important ones. You're going to want to pick up your Anti-Magic Zone for the most part. You don't always need this, but usually you want this, so it's just a good kind of set it and forget it node that we're generally going to want to take. You're also always going to want Icy Talons, increasing that melee attack speed. Very, very good. I think that Anti-Magic Barrier is a pretty much set and forget node as well. It reduces the cooldown of our Anti-Magic Shell, which is that ability to avoid those pesky magic debuffs. It also increases the amount absorbed, so we get a lot, and it's 40%, which is a lot. So we get a lot of magic damage negation through this rune, or this node, this 1 point. So I think it's almost always worth taking. This is a choice here. Either improved reach on our death grips, more range, and a reset on killing an enemy, or the single target choke of Asphyxiate. Now, what I'm going to say here, and anybody who watches my guides in the future is going to know this and want to know this, just it's my style. I like to make fun builds. I play this game to have fun. I like to get, I do Heroic Raid, and I always get the Mythic Plus achievement for the mount and stuff like that every season, but I'm not like a super high-end player, all right? I don't build my guides for those purposes. I build my guides to have fun and teach you guys things about the classes and the characters. So Asphyxiate is literally Darth Vader, okay? You cast Asphyxiate on a target, and it chokes them out. It floats them up into the air, choking them by the throat. They grasp at their throat, and they flail. It's Darth Vader incarnate, all right? It just feels sick. I always take this. It's awesome. It's amazing in PvP. It's really good for CCing mobs in dungeons. You can CC mobs while leveling if they're, like, hitting you for a lot of damage and stuff like that. Really cool ability. I think Asphyxiate is just, like, an all-the-time, everyday thing for me. Blood Scent increases Leech. We have a lot of access to Leech, especially as a Sand Lane, which I'll get in a second here. Leech is a pretty good stat. It's not fantastic. It's not like make or break, but I think Leech is a good stat. We have a lot of access to Leech as a Blood Death Knight, so having more just allows us to heal for more, which is kind of the name of the game, all right? Unholy Endurance. I don't think this is a necessary one, but on Sand Lane specifically, I think we are going to take it all the time because there's a talent that plays into our Lichborn here, and having a lower cooldown is better as a Sand Lane, so that's why I take it. If you're going to go Deathbringer, we maybe don't take it, etc., but just a decent point here. Okay, when you get down into the capstones, really important ones are going to be your Will of the Necropolis and your Death's Echo. This is what's giving us those two charges of our Death's Advance, Death and Decay, and our Death Grip. We want as many of those as we can, so this is very good. Will of the Necropolis is a little bit buggy, but what it does is damage taken below 30% health is reduced by 35%. It's a very large damage reduction. When it functions correctly, it's very, very noticeable. And then over here, Null Magic. Magic damage taken is reduced by 8%, and the duration of harmful magical effects against you are reduced by 35%. Magic damage is a large portion of the game, okay? Lots of raid and dungeon mechanics do magic damage. Most AoE things, swirlies on the ground, are magic damage swirlies. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So we just take a lot less damage by having this Null Magic node here. Consuming a rune has a chance to increase your strength by 60% for 8 seconds. Also, it procs relatively often. This is a decent strength increase for us, which remember is both armor through Bone Shield and damage. So those are kind of the important ones. How you get there, I'll let you guys kind of figure that out. There's lots of good talent guides on Wowhead, Icy Veins, etc. And if you guys want me to make like a super in-depth talent guide, like dedicated video to that, I can do that as well. Just tell me that in the comments if you guys want that. Okay. Hero talents, Deathbringer versus Sandlane. Deathbringer, very, very cool, very thematic. I'll activate this to showcase it here for you guys really quick. The reason why I was playing Sandlane and probably will play Sandlane is because I'm a roleplay guy, alright? And Sandlane is just very vampiric, and I like being a tanky vampire. That's kind of like my thing. That's why I like Blood Death Knight. But Deathbringer is also very, very cool. You get this ability called Reaper's Mark. It costs 2 runes, just like a Morrowrend. Through the talents in the tree, it also is going to give you stacks of Bone Shield, so it kind of replaces Morrowrend when you need it to. So you walk up to your enemy here, you cast the Reaper's Mark, sends out a wave of frost, which goes out and comes back, gives you those 3 Bone Shields, charges, and stacks up the Reaper's Mark on your enemy. What you're going to want to do is then keep those marks going. When the marks expire, you're going to get a little proc on your Morrowrend, which is going to make it cost 1 rune instead of 2 runes. You use it, and it shoots this scythe. 1 vertical slash and 1 horizontal slash. That's the Deathbringer kind of in a nutshell. That's what Deathbringer does. It's very cool. The damage you get out of Deathbringer is definitely higher than out of Sandlane, especially in AoE, where those scythes are slashing and those waves of frost are going out and coming back. You do gain a lot of DPS out of Deathbringer, and it's very cool and thematic, very Frost Death Knight feeling from the Deathbringer. So, what does Sandlane do then? Well, Sandlane, I'm going to have to actually wait for this to maybe get out of combat here. Sandlane is our more like vampiric choice. Sandlane has a little bit more mobility talents as well, which I like, and for leveling it's, you know, what I'm probably going to do, even though Deathbringer is more damage. You guys will probably like Deathbringer more. I fully expect you guys to pick Deathbringer. it's cooler for most people, I would say. The Frost Scythes are very, very cool, but Sandlane is like vampiric. You get this cool ability in Vampiric Aura. Your leech is increased by a flat 2%, and while Lichborn is active, the leech bonus of this effect is increased by 100%, and it affects 4 allies within 12 yards. It's not super impactful, but I just like the theme of this. We also gained access to Vampiric Speed, which gives our Death's Advance a AoE effect, so we can actually boost our party members' speed buff or speed as well. Kind of cool. And Sandlane does play more into our Dancing Rune Weapon cooldown. So Dancing Rune Weapon is our offensive ability cooldown. I don't think that I covered it in this video. I can check, but it's our main offensive cooldown, right? Sandlane buffs our Dancing Rune Weapon a little bit, so it makes our burst higher. We don't do as much damage overall as Deathbringer. I'm not claiming that we do, but it does make our burst with our Dancing Rune Weapon a little bit higher, so that's pretty cool. It also adds this interesting Blood Beast. So when we cast our Dancing Rune Weapon, we get a Blood Beast that like siphons health from enemies and explodes for some damage and healing as well. So it's kind of like a thematic blood theme there from Sandlane. Okay, let's break into the right side here, then we'll end the video after that. Same thing I did on the left. I'm just going to touch on the important nodes here. The reason why I didn't do that for the hero talents is because you get all of them. You don't have to make any choices really. You just get everything. You can make choices in the choice nodes, but like in terms of points, you'll just have access to your full tree out of your hero talents, your hero trees there. So okay, important talents out of Blood. Well, as you can see, I'm actually going to do a little new loadout here. just so I can kind of walk you guys through this. Let's reset all. You have to go through all of these right out the gate, right? Our first choices to make, we have 3 talents left. We definitely need Ossuary. Okay, I already covered that one. Here, Heart Strike damage, improved Vampiric Blood, Relish in Blood. Well, what I said earlier was, what's the most important thing for us? Runic Power. Relish in Blood does give us more Runic Power. When our Crimson Scourge proc happens, which is just a proc that occurs for our Death and Decay, you're going to gain 10 Runic Power. I think this is very noticeable for my Runic Power generation and my Death Strike usage, so I choose to take this all the time. We have 1 left over. We have 4 empty slots here. I'm going to recommend to start, you guys just take damage. Go with damage and Heart Strike. Now, this is one gripe that I have with the way that the talents are built. What I'm going to do to kind of get rid of that gripe is I'm going to put my own foot in my mouth. I'm going to take out the Relish in Blood here, because as you notice, we are not able to get to our Dancing Rune Weapon because we need 2 in Heart Strike or 2 in Vampiric Blood to get to our Rune Weapon, and we're definitely taking our Rune Weapon. Okay, Dancing Rune Weapon is a very important ability. We need it. So we have to choose 2 points here or here. I don't like when talent trees do that. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to go, crap. All right, well, let's not take a Relish in Blood, even though we are losing out on that 10 Runic Power. We're going to put Heart Strike here, improved Heart Strike, so we can take our Rune Weapon. All right, here we are. Insatiable Blade, Dancing Rune Weapon's cooldown is reduced by 30 seconds and now generates 5 one-shot charges. Yes, which lets us get to summons 1 additional copy of Dancing Rune Weapon and increases its duration by 4 seconds. Yes, okay. So these are the really, really, really important ones that we need, okay? The other really important ones that we need, in my opinion, are Voracious. Death Strike's healing is increased by 5%, and it grants you 12% leech for 8 seconds. That's a lot of leech. Combined with all of our other leech sources, 2 from here, 3 from here. We've got a ton of leech, guys, all right? So Voracious is very easy buff to upkeep, gives us a lot of leech, more survivability. Another very, very, very important node here, improved Bone Shield. Bone Shield increases your haste by 10%, and it can stack 2 additional times. The 2 additional stacks doesn't really matter. It does give us a little bit more leeway with not overstacking our Bone Shields and like wasting. But you don't gain more haste per stack. It's just as long as you have 1 stack of Bone Shield, you gain 10% haste. Very good. We want improved Bone Shield all the time, every time. Okay, now we've got 10 points left. We need to break into our capstones, our last row here. Well, what do we want? I've been testing these talents a lot. Hemostasis is very, very good. Each enemy hit by Blood Boil increases the damage and healing done by your next Death Strike by 8%, stacking up to 5 times. That's very nice. Your Heart Strike generates 2 additional Runic Power per target hit. More Runic Power generation is always good. That lets us pick between our Gorfien's Grasp and our Abomination's Limb that I picked before. Just pick one, whichever one you need for that moment. Now we can pick our Boiling Point. I really like this talent. Heart Strike has a chance to make your next Blood Boil empowered, dealing 50% increased damage and echoing after 3 seconds. More damage basically for free. You just get a proc of this, you press it, more Blood Boils, more damage. Great. Okay, this is kind of where I get to every time that I build up a talent tree. We've touched on every important node we can. We have 3 points left. You guys can experiment as much as you want. I don't think there's any wrong answers at this point, okay? What I will say is that I already mentioned I really like Relish in Blood for more Runic Power generation. I choose to go that route, okay? Bloodworms is very cool. It is actually a decent amount of healing. You summon these little worms next to you, and they will consume themselves when you go below 50% health and give you a nice little burst heal. It is a noticeable survivability buff. It's not crazy, but it is noticeable. You have some versatility you could choose from, improving your Blood Plague and Death and Decay damage, which will also allow your Blood Plague to leech you more health. The health leech out of the Blood Plague doesn't really matter too much. I don't love this talent. A lot of builds that I see are taking it. It is a bit of a DPS increase. I don't love it. In Mythic Plus or farming content, I think this is going to be where you guys are going to want to be at least one of these points in, okay? Deadly Reach, Death Strike hits an additional 2 enemies at 75% effectiveness. That's a lot. It's almost 100%, right? 75% is a lot. It's a big DPS increase, especially in AoE scenarios, okay? Deadly Reach is what I'm going to recommend you guys take in most content. Raiding is like the only time where you don't really need it because it's mostly a single target in raiding. But every other scenario, Deadly Reach is very, very good. So now we only have 1 point left, okay? For that 1 point, Bloodworms might be the way to go. Improved Vampiric Blood could be the way to go. Lifeblood could be the way to go. Death Strike heals for an additional 20% of its healing over 5 seconds. It kind of gives you this healing over time effect to your Death Strike. I'm going to say I probably recommend that be where you guys go with this. It's just a passive increase to your survivability, okay? We finally broke into our last row here. What are the really important nodes that we want? The first one is going to be Red Thirst. Absolutely insane amount of survivability increase from Red Thirst. Reduces the cooldown of Vampiric Blood by 2 seconds per 10 runic power spent. So every Death Strike, which is either 40 or 35 runic power spent, you're gaining at least... So 3 or 4 times 2, right, seconds of reduction on your Vampiric Blood. Vampiric Blood is our best and most used survivability cooldown. So we definitely want to get to Red Thirst. It's a huge survivability upgrade, which means we have to take Coagulopathy to get to our Red Thirst. This next one, Umbilicus Eternus, is actually a decent amount of survivability. After Vampiric Blood expires, you absorb damage equal to 5 times the damage your Blood Plague dealt during Vampiric Blood. This obviously does a lot more in Mythic Plus, where your Blood Plagues are on more targets. I would say in a raiding scenario, this isn't a huge amount of healing increase. It is noticeable, though, and not bad, but Mythic Plus, it's much better. All of the guides you see are going to want you to take this consumption ability. I don't like this ability. I think it's clunky. I think it's poorly designed. I don't like pressing it. It's not fun to me. I avoid it. I just don't take consumption. People will troll me for that. They'll think that I'm playing suboptimally. Probably right. I don't like this ability. I think it's just not fun. Bad ability. Get rid of it. Give me something else. Don't like it. Bloodshot's pretty good. While Blood Shield is active, you deal 8% increased damage. Blood Shield is a passive that we get when we use our Death Strike. A percentage of that is granted to us as a physical damage absorption shield, directly affected by our Mastery stat, okay? We want Bloodshot. It does a decent amount of DPS increase for us, which means we have to take Iron Heart to get to Bloodshot. Iron Heart says Blood Shield's duration is increased by 2 seconds, and it absorbs 20% more damage, so just a direct buff to our Blood Shield, that Mastery for us. We have 6 points left. Sanguine Ground is very good. You deal 6% more damage and receive 5% more healing while standing in your Death and Decay. Very strong, okay? That is just kind of going to buff our Death and Decay, give us that survivability bonus, and give us more incentive to stand within our Death and Decay. I'm going to avoid Purgatory for now. We'll touch on that last. We've got 5 points left. Plague Infusion to get to Blood Mist isn't a bad choice. Blood Mist is very strong. When you cast Dancing Rune Weapon, you become enveloped in a Blood Mist that surrounds you for 8 seconds, increasing your parry by 5%. Parry is the ability to fend off those melee physical damage attacks. Deals some damage every 1 second to enemies within 10 yards. Every time it deals damage, you gain 2 runic power up to a maximum of 10 per hit. Okay? Deals reduced magic damage or reduced damage beyond 8 targets. This is obviously better in Mythic Plus AoE scenarios as well. So again, for farming, I think this is very good. It allows you to deal more damage, kill more mobs. So we're going to take that. Okay? I think this is another one of those important ones you guys want to probably take. Now, 3 points left. Here's where I say there are not a lot of wrong answers. There's a ton of options you could go with. Alright? The last thing that I'll really kind of say then, you guys kind of test the rest of this out. Purgatory is recommended in a lot of builds. I hate this ability. Well, I've got a love-hate relationship, I should say, with this ability. What Purgatory does, when you die every 4 minutes, instead of dying, you gain this absorption for the amount of damage that you took that was lethal to you, okay? And if you can heal through that absorption in 3 seconds, you don't die. Fantastic. It doesn't matter if a healer heals you, like someone in your party, or you heal yourself, or you chug a potion, or you eat a warlock health stone, whatever, okay? As long as you can heal more than that absorption amount that killed you, you will just simply not die every 4 minutes. It's actually quite strong. It's very strong, and it's very good for hard content, progression raiding, unorganized groups where your healer isn't very good, and things like that, right? But here's the thing about Purgatory. If it never triggers, then you see no benefit from it, right? If you never die, you never proc Purgatory, and it doesn't matter. So basically what that means is leveling, easier dungeons, lower mythic plus keys, you basically never need this because you'll never die anyways, right? You only really need this in uncertain, super high-end, high damage volatility environments, right? And also if your healer is maybe like a new healer, or you don't have a regular healer you play with, or you don't play with a group of friends, or a raid heal, like a group healer, right, who because if you can trust your healer to keep you from getting super low randomly, this is also useless in those scenarios as well, right? So kind of decide if this is good for you, if you want to try it. If you want to just set it and forget it and always have this kind of security blanket, feel free. I'm not saying it's a terrible talent. I'm just saying there is reasons to not take it as well, okay? I sometimes just don't take Purgatory because I know what I can do in a specific encounter, a specific dungeon. I'll just remove Purgatory, I won't take it, and I'll put my point somewhere else, okay? For now, if you guys want to take it, I'll just say that's kind of the generic most important abilities or nodes are achieved here, which as you guys can see only leaves you like 2 sort of free points. We covered some like situational ones, so maybe you can free up some points there, but this is what I would recommend. This kind of covers everything. That's going to be the end of it there, guys. What I will say as kind of like a wrap up is just, I urge you guys, if you like the idea, the theme of Death Knight, if you like that sort of undead warrior, plate-wearing juggernaut who just like sucks the life force from his enemies and never dies, blood vampire type, theme, give it a try. Try tanking, try blood. Hope to see you guys out there for Midnight. Only in a few hours here, guys. Have fun. Have a good day. Bye-bye.